The documentary you're about to see is about the SARAR participatory non-formal education methodology that emerged in the mid-1970s, inspired by Lyra Srinivasan, and a concern for the global poor, lack of access to basic education, and social injustice. Working with associates around the world in Africa, Asia, Latin America, even the United States, and drawing lessons that were emerging from the fields of adult education, humanistic, social psychology. The methodology focused in particular on the individual within the social context. The methodology is widely known for its impact in the water and sanitation sector, but since it's essentially content-free, it's also been adapted and applied to numerous sectors. We feel that the methodology, in fact, by sharing the essence and some of the basic principles beyond the tools, can inspire development practitioners to look further, go deeper, and find and use this in their own work.
I started a program in UNDP which was aimed at the promotion of the role of women in water supply and sanitation projects. And it was part of the UN Water Decade, which had set very optimistic goals in terms of supplying communities around the world with water. And these had been essentially run by male engineers who had very technical idea of what installing a water supply system was, which had to do with all of the hardware. And most of these didn't provide much training at community level, and they broke down, and after an average of 2 years, they weren't working. These were usually big water supply projects of the World Bank, WHO, UNICEF, multi-million-dollar programs. But as they began to realize they needed to work with communities, they didn't know how. They had none of the background that was necessary. And that was when we realized that you have to start working with non-governmental organizations, that these are the organizations that do have the relationships with communities. And so we made them principal partners of our program. But that was when I had to look around for people who knew how to work with communities, had been practicing this, had experience in this. And this was how I came across Lyra Srinivasan, who had been practicing a methodology that she called SARAR. And so we were lucky enough to be able to grab her and bring her in to work with our very small team under PHAST.
Well, I have to go back a little bit in terms of my career. First of all, I had been working with the United Nations for 14 years, and it was great. And I was doing research, and I was doing drafting resolutions for the Social Commission to discuss and so forth. It was a wonderful experience. But after 14 years, I felt that I had not really seen any impact that I may have helped to produce at the level of a poor family. It was a very big decision because I had no alternative plan of employment. But I knew that I had to leave. And after trying a couple of things, really survival tactics, I got to know international voluntary agencies.
The experiential part is so important in terms of adult education because that's how adults learn. And the SARAR approaches and principles can be built into a lot of training programs, where you move from the more experiential to the more didactic through the workshop process. Lyra Srinivasan talked about the fact that the Prowess Manual, Tools for Community Participation, was deliberately designed so that even though it was focused primarily on water and women, that people could understand by reading through the principles and be able to adapt them to their own concerns and sectors.
First of all, you have to begin with the conviction that the people are capable of thinking for themselves, that they have the intellect, the capacity to think through their problems. And so you do not give them solutions, you give them situations, and you challenge them to find ways to improve that situation. And that's where the community members can challenge each other and come up with their own ideas, and it has proved to be both enjoyable and productive.
Fue en el año del 2004, finales del 2004, 2005 aproximadamente, en donde nosotros empezamos a trabajar con SARAR y Teposeco. Nos enseñaron la metodología SARAR con herramientas muy sencillas, unos dibujos, mapas, dibujar nuestro pueblo, nuestra casa y nuestro baño. Y se fue trabajando por equipos, se hicieron equipos no me acuerdo si fue de 5 o 10 familias, me parece. Entonces fue importante porque había gente que a veces no sabía leer, ¿no? Pero sí se interesaba en pintar o en dibujar.
Creativity is an essential goal of SARAR. Unless we can stimulate the mind of the village people to come up with their own ideas, they're always going to be dependent on the outsider. So we have to enable them to see how they can solve very simple problems and then increase the complexity of the stimulus that we provide them.
One of the things very important about SARAR is it helps people reflect on their own role as trainers. And often what happens to trainers or community promoters or educators is that they tend to teach the way they learned. And they often fall into this role of being an authority. And we all like to do that. Right now I'm the specialist. I'm talking about what you need to do. And this is a real danger when you're trying to help people develop self-esteem.
SARAR is an acronym which involves self-esteem, associative strength, resourcefulness, action planning, and responsibility for follow-through.
This methodology helps them realize that they can do it, that they don't have to sit around and wait for government, and that a lot of government money and government tools, machines, etc., isn't going to be the answer to everything, that they are going to be able to provide the answers themselves if they can learn how to access the other things that they need.
In places where there is a very strict hierarchy and everything has to be told and people have to just follow the instructions, it's extremely difficult for them to be open and participatory. Usually it's a very simple thing to do. But in some countries, which I will not name, it's been very difficult. They have not been able to do it.
Recently somebody said to me that he had come to one of the courses and the first day he said, "What is this? Nobody is lecturing. You know, we're not giving lectures." Later on there may be some PowerPoint presentations and sharing and guest lecturers, but the first couple of days there's none of that.
In SARAR we use pictures to a large extent because pictures are a way to vividly present situations that people can react to. But unfortunately, many people think that the use of pictures is somehow not dignified enough. They think it is kindergarten stuff. they feel that we are talking down to them.
En la herramienta de la metodología SARAR hay material muy bonito y uno de los favoritos que a mí me gustó mucho fue de Historia sin medio, ¿no? Que consiste en unos dibujos que está un pueblo así como muy feo donde hay basura, hay desorden, hay animales sueltos y personas desorganizadas, pues, ¿no? O sea, muy desordenada, y otra imagen en donde está un pueblo limpio, ya con ordenado, no hay basura, ya las personas están sembrando hortalizas, ellos mismos producen sus alimentos. Entonces son cosas muy sencillas, pero que uno saca mucho, ¿no?
En relación a otras metodologías y la metodología SARAR, si hablamos de metodologías participativas, yo creo que comparten el mismo espíritu, ¿verdad? Que es promover una participación real y exitosa de las personas, valorar el conocimiento local, crear una relación horizontal entre los diferentes actores que se involucran en los procesos de desarrollo. Tal vez la diferencia que yo veo con otras metodologías es que es una metodología bastante gráfica, ¿verdad? Y que lleva un proceso ordenado de llevarte desde la sensibilización a la conceptualización y luego a la acción, ¿verdad? En donde tú ya puedes planificar y actuar en una forma más ordenada y definida.
The SARAR methodology is one that puts a lot of emphasis on experience. So we do not ever tell people who are going to be trainers how we train. We simply put them into the training process itself. For example, most people who come to a workshop expect speeches, expect an opening ceremony with highly placed people telling them about the workshop and trying to get them to be impressed with the importance of the workshop and so forth. But we insist with the sponsoring agency that there should not be an opening ceremony at all. What we do is we welcome the group and we spend the day perhaps in getting to know each other. We have introductions that are low-key. The facilitators and I myself, we just sit with the group on the floor sometimes or on chairs, but in a very informal way. That sets the tone for the whole workshop, especially if we have introductions that are humorous and there's a lot of laughter and joking around, they relax. No hierarchy. When they go to the village also, they're not going there to impress the people of how important they are as government representatives or agency representatives. They're going to be able to relate to the people as people on an equal basis.
La metodología SARAR es algo con la que uno se identifica y en donde los que pertenecen al equipo de SARAR no llegan a decir queremos esto, esto y el otro. Al contrario, sino que nos dejan ser libres, nos dejan ser nosotros mismos. Y si entramos en discusión, nada más están para moderar el equipo, ¿no? No llegan a mandar, pues, ni a imponer nada.
One of the powerful tools that we use in SARAR that are used by now quite generally in many community-based development processes is mapping, community mapping. Mapping is a participatory conceptual process. A way that we have done mapping is often in smaller groups, and you will give them a task to map. Now you may ask them to map their village, or you may ask them to map their watershed, or they may map their school, or even at times a typical household can be something.
When one has a vision of something you want to do, and you are intensely committed to that vision, somehow things begin to happen.
Ahora cuando viene un integrante de SARAR, pues los reciben con abrazos abiertos, ¿no? Porque aparte de que son de una organización, de que ellos vienen a hacer su trabajo, ellos demuestran una amistad, ¿no? O sea, se integran a las familias como amigos y son bienvenidos, ¿no? Y si necesitan algo, pues la misma gente dice cuando quieran algo, pues está aquí su pobre casa, ¿no? Yo creo que SARAR ha sido recibido aquí en el pueblo de San Juan Tlacotenco bien, porque él ha entrado con respeto y amabilidad a las familias que se han acercado, ¿no? Asimismo como al ayudante municipal, ¿no? Siempre se dirige con respeto y con un permiso antes de entrar, ¿no? Entonces yo creo que eso ha sido la base para que el proyecto fuera todo un éxito, ¿no? El de los baños secos.
La manera en que llega adentro de las personas, es decir, la metodología no pasa por encimita, sino llega a profundidad, y creo que ahí es donde logramos hacer los cambios actitudinales. Las técnicas son muy apropiadas como para llegar a fondo.
Many projects that are funded externally have deadlines, and they are very anxious to show results according to a schedule. Therefore, they cannot afford, they say, to have a process that can take a long time. And they would like to be able to say, cut the discussion short and let's get going, getting things happening. And almost coerce the people to produce the results that they expect. Well, SARAR will not do that. SARAR wants the people to grow in ability so that it's not a temporary achievement. It is something permanent in their own selves that will continue even after the change of government or change of auspices or whatever. So that, I think, in time and with results will convince the higher-ups that it is worthwhile to take the time in the process to do that.
Okay. I think one of the things that it's important to sort of understand about SARAR, or any methodology that shares these basic principles, is that development is based on people. People matter. People are the building block. And if you put these building blocks together into a group, which is what SARAR skillfully does in terms of facilitating, you will be able to really share and reinforce their inherent knowledge and their acquired knowledge. I am obviously convinced that the basic principles and the tools and the approach of the SARAR methodology are extremely valuable in terms of moving forward, in terms of development in the broader sense, in terms of creating sustainable communities.
Donor governments, even private donors, want to be able to see that what they've been contributing to has in fact had the benefit. But I think that it's important for them to realize that just building a school, for example, and being able to put your name on it, if you don't have the teachers, or what is being taught isn't relevant for the lives of the people who are learning it, of the children who are learning it, then you haven't achieved anything in terms of progress.
Sinceramente, la metodología para mí fue una de las metodologías que cambió mi vida.
If you're poor, but you have a vision, you can get out of poverty. And perhaps that's what we need to do in the SARAR methodology, to be able to say, how can we help the people to envision a different reality and to work towards that and support that so that they don't have to be poor for the rest of their lives.